Most people assume that if they've paid national insurance for 35 years, they'll receive the full state pension. That seems fair. That seems like the deal. But I've watched people reach retirement with 40, 45, even 50 years of NI contributions on their record, and still find out they're getting less than the full amount, not a little less. We're talking shortfalls of £30 to £50 a week. The full new state pension in 2026-27 is £241.30 per week. If you're short by £40 a week, that's £2,080 a year. Over a 20-year retirement, that's £41,600 you didn't get, and you may have no idea why. The reason is buried in a number on your state pension forecast called the COPE, the Contracted Out Pension Equivalent. Most people have never heard of it. Fewer still know how to read it. And for many who worked in the public sector or in large private firms through the 1980s and 1990s, that number is reducing their starting amount in a way that extra NI years alone cannot fix. I spent years in a workplace pension that was contracted out without me ever realizing it. When I finally pulled up my forecast and saw what it meant, I was genuinely shocked. And if that's happened to you, you're not alone, and you didn't do anything wrong. In the next few minutes, I want to explain exactly what contracting out is, why 35 years of NI isn't always enough, and what you can still do about it today. If you're 55 to 65 and the state pension is part of your retirement plan, hit subscribe now. We cut through what the system doesn't explain, and we do it every week. To understand why 35 years sometimes isn't enough, you need to know what happened in 2016. Before April 2016, the state pension had two parts. There was the basic state pension, the flat rate that most people knew about, and there was the additional state pension, sometimes called SERPs or S2P, which was an earnings-related top-up that built up on top. The more you earned and the more years you paid in, the more additional state pension you accumulated. When the government introduced the new flat-rate state pension in April 2016, they needed to convert everyone's entitlement across to the new system. So they ran two calculations. First, they worked out what you would have received under the old rules, basic plus additional. Second, they worked out what you'd get under the new rules, simply your years of NI divided by 35 times the full rate. You got whichever figure was higher. That became your starting amount. For most people, that was straightforward. But for anyone who was contracted out, there was a catch. Being contracted out meant that during certain years, you and your employer paid reduced national insurance contributions. In exchange, part of your state pension entitlement was handed over to a workplace or private pension scheme instead. The additional state pension you would have built up, gone, replaced by contributions into a separate scheme. So when 2016 arrived and the government ran those two calculations, contracted out workers often found their old rules figure was much lower. Their starting amount was lower. And here is the part that really matters. No amount of extra NI years paid after 2016 can raise that starting amount above what it was set at that moment. The DWP estimates that around 10 million people have been contracted out at some point in their working lives. Around 1 in 5 of those reaching state pension age today receive less than the full amount because of it. This isn't your fault. You didn't sign up for this arrangement. In most cases, your employer enrolled you into a contracted-out scheme automatically. You may have been paying NI for 3 decades and never once been told that a portion of your state pension was being redirected elsewhere. That frustration is completely justified. The new system was designed to simplify things, but for contracted-out workers it locked in a disadvantage at the point of transition and set the rules before many people even knew the game had changed. So the trap was already in place before you retired. But there's another layer to this that most people miss. Many of you were auto-enrolled into that contracted-out workplace scheme without any choice in the matter. That's the system exploit we need to look at next. If you were contracted out, there's a very specific thing I want you to check on your state pension forecast. It's called the COPE figure, the Contracted Out Pension Equivalent. The COPE is not a penalty. It's an estimate of how much your workplace pension scheme should have replaced in state pension. The idea was that your private pension made up for what you lost from SERPs or S2P. The problem is that for many people, especially those in defined contribution schemes in the 1980s and 1990s, the private pension they received was nowhere near enough to cover what they gave up. I used to tell people to simply buy missing NI years without thinking much about it. Then I ran the numbers properly for someone I was close to, a 69-year-old with health concerns, and I realized I had been giving careless advice. Here is the standard calculation that most articles give you. One extra qualifying year of state pension in 2026-27 is worth £6.89 per week, or around £358 per year. The cost to buy a missing year is roughly £923 for the 2025-26 tax year. Divide £923 by £358 and the break-even point is about 2.6 years. That sounds like an obvious win, but that calculation ignores three things that can completely change the answer. First, your health and life expectancy. If you're 68 today, ONS data suggests an average life expectancy in the mid-80s, but if your health is poor, your real break-even window shrinks. You might pay £923 and receive far less in return. Second, your tax position. If your total retirement income, pension, drawdown, rental income, whatever it might be, already pushes you into the 40% tax band above £50,270, then that extra £358 a year in state pension is worth only £215 after tax. Your break-even stretches to over 4 years. That changes the maths considerably. Third, the opportunity cost. £923 sitting in a stocks and shares ISA for 15 years at modest growth could easily outperform the after-tax state pension income it would have bought. None of this means topping up is wrong. For many people in good health with a basic tax rate, it still makes good sense. But the decision deserves a proper look, not a panic payment made because someone told you it was a guaranteed win. Think of your pension record like two separate bank accounts, one old, one new. The old account held your basic state pension and whatever additional state pension you had built up over your working life. The new account was introduced in April 2016 and works on a simpler formula, just your qualifying years divided by 35. When the government merged them, they took the higher balance from the two accounts and made that your starting amount for the new system. If the old account was lower because of contracting out, you started with a deficit that post-2016 NI years can only partially address, and in some cases not at all, because the starting amount is already capped. For years, there was a way to partially repair that. Under a special extended window, you could pay voluntary contributions to fill gaps in your NI record going back as far as 2006. That window closed on the 5th of April 2025. I remember sitting at my kitchen table in 2024, looking at my own forecast, thinking I would sort it in the spring. I left it too long. That feeling of regret is something I've heard from a lot of people since. But regret about the past doesn't have to shape what you do next. As of June 2026, you can still fill gaps from the last 6 tax years, meaning back to 2020-21. That's a window worth using if you have gaps in that range and the maths works in your favour. The current Class 3 rate for filling a 2025-26 gap is £923. What you cannot do now is go back further. The years between 2006 and 2020 are closed. If you have large contracted-out shortfalls that span those earlier decades, voluntary top-ups alone cannot close that gap entirely. That is a hard truth for some people to sit with. But the more useful question is what you can still do with the years that are open, and whether doing so actually makes financial sense for your specific situation. The missed deadline doesn't mean you're stuck. It means the options are narrower. And narrower options still deserve a clear head, not a panic decision made from the fear of missing out again. When people learn all of this, the contracting out, the 2016 transition, The missed deadline, one of the most common reactions, is not action. It's a kind of paralysis. I've seen it happen in 3 different ways. The first is mistrust. If the government moved the goalposts once, they'll do it again. Why should I top up now only for them to means test the state pension in 10 years? That concern is not irrational. The rules have changed before, and they may change again. But the state pension has strong political protection, and the triple lock has survived multiple governments. Complete inaction based on a theoretical future change is a decision with its own cost. The second is procrastination. I'll look at it properly when I have more time. That sentence has a cost too. The 6-year window moves forward each April. A gap that was open to you today may close in a year's time. Waiting doesn't make the decision easier, it just makes it more expensive. The third is fear of getting it wrong. What if I pay and then don't live long enough? What if I waste the money? That fear is completely understandable. Nobody wants to make a decision that doesn't pay off, but there is a way to frame this that makes it easier. Think of NI top-ups not as a bet on how long you'll live, but as an insurance policy on your income floor. You're not gambling. You're choosing how secure your baseline income is. The cost is fixed and known. The benefit is predictable and index-linked. If you're in reasonable health with a basic rate tax position, the insurance premium is fair. The goal is to make the decision once, clearly, with the right numbers in front of you, not to revisit it with anxiety every 6 months. If you want more of this kind of thinking, UK-specific, no sales pitch, no product pushing, hit subscribe. This community is built for people who want to plan clearly, not emotionally. Right, here is exactly what to do. Step 1. Get your state pension forecast. You can do this for free at gov.uk. Search for Check Your State Pension and log in with your Government Gateway account. The forecast shows your current entitlement, the number of qualifying years you already have, the years with gaps, and if it applies to you, your COPE figure. Look at that COPE figure carefully. If it is 0 or very small, contracting out probably hasn't significantly affected you. If it's a meaningful number, say £20 or £30 a week, compare it to your actual private or workplace pension income. If your private pension is paying more than the COPE, the system worked more or less as intended. If your private pension is paying less, that is where some of your shortfall lies. Step 2. Identify your fillable gaps. The forecast also shows which tax years are not full. Only gaps from 2020-21 to 2025-26 can currently be topped up. Any gaps before 2020-21 are now closed under standard rules. Step 3. Work out the cost. Filling a gap from the 2025-26 tax year costs around £923 in Class 3 contributions. Each full year you add gives you roughly £358 more in state pension annually. That break-even in simple terms is about 2.6 years, but before you act, run your personal version of this. What is your realistic life expectancy based on your age, gender, and health? ONS life tables give you a starting point. A man aged 65 today has an average life expectancy into his mid-80s. A woman aged 65 has a few extra years beyond that on average. Use those figures as a baseline, then adjust for your own circumstances. What is your marginal tax rate in retirement? If your total income in retirement stays below £50,270, you're at 20%. If it tips above, you're at 40%. That changes what the extra state pension is actually worth to you after HMRC takes its share. Then there's this. Take Sarah. She's 66, short by 2 qualifying years, in good health and pays basic rate tax. She fills 2 years at a total cost of around £1,846. She gains £716 per year in extra state pension before tax and £573 after. Her break-even is just over 3 years. If she was to 86, she gains around £11,000 over her retirement. That is a good decision. Now take John. He's 69, short by 1 year, and has health conditions that suggest a shorter horizon. He pays £923 for 1 year and gains £358 a year before tax. If he lives fewer than 10 years, he doesn't break even. For John, the decision is much less clear, and skipping it might be entirely reasonable. Step 4. If the numbers work, pay online through the HMRC voluntary contribution service or call the Future Pension Centre on 0800 731 0175 to confirm the exact amount before you send anything. Do not pay without checking the exact figure with HMRC first. The amounts can vary depending on which specific tax years you are filling. Let me pull this together. The state pension is not a straightforward reward for 35 years of contributions. If you were contracted out during any part of your working life, your starting amount under the new system may have been permanently set lower, and extra NI years after 2016 may not be able to close that gap entirely. The COPE figure on your forecast is not a penalty. It's a reference point. Compare it honestly to what your workplace pension has actually delivered. The option to top up NI goes back 6 years under current rules. Whether you should use it depends on your health, your tax rate, and what the money could do elsewhere. There is no universal right answer, only your answer, with the right numbers in front of you. The most important thing is not to make a decision from panic, and not to avoid making one from fear. Check your forecast. Run the numbers. Decide once. Clearly. If this helped you see your own situation more clearly, leave a comment below. I'm genuinely curious what your COPE figure looks like, because it varies a lot more than most people expect. Subscribe to the channel. Every week, one UK pension rule explained in a way you can actually use. See you next time.